Hi, it's Simon Stockhausen here. As I was asked quite frequently over the last few weeks to make a tutorial how to use the new Wavetable synth in Halion 6, here is a quick and dirty explanation. So let's start re-synthesizing something. I've dragged in a sample, a violin sample. Let's drag it in again so you see. Right-clicking will give you the option to choose the play button. Let's listen to it. So it's a violin with 4 bows on one note with vibrato. So for now, let's select the whole sample. If you want to see the pitch detection, click on this icon here, and the red line says it's pretty much detecting pitch very well, despite the transition here that's a bit dodgy. And you can set the sensitivity here. So if you set it to 20, which is the highest, it will have more detail. If you set it to 1, it's less detail. And with some samples, then it can't resynthesize if it doesn't detect the pitch correctly. So 7 is the default, which seems pretty good for this one. Now we have different modes. First, let's select the equal distance, which will distribute all markers over the sample equally. And you can set the number of markers here. So let's say we want 100 waveforms extracted from that sample, which has now happened. Here you have different window types: rectangular Hamming, Blackman Harris. They do make a difference depending on the source material. Let's stay with Hamming for now, and we can later see how it affects the sound. So then here we have a normalize function, either normalize each wave or the whole sequence. So for now we want to keep the dynamics of the original violin, so let's use sequence. You see, so then it's normalized, meaning the volume is raised in relation to the loudest waveform in this sequence. So let's listen to it. Select all here now. So all are selected. I'll play a C3, although the original pitch was a G sharp 3, which you see here, plus 9 cent. So that's the... So we are not looped, so it will now rest on the last waveform. You can also listen to each waveform separately by hitting the solo button. So let's loop the sequence. So first select all. Here's a loop. So this is normal forward looping, and this is alternate looping, meaning it will loop forth and back and forth. So here's the speed. So you hear the vibrato is preserved. Here you have different phase modes. This is now a line phase. The original phase, like in the sample, sounds totally different. It's sort of fluttering. Because the pitch vibrato is affecting the phases, of course. So if you align the phases, it gets much smoother. Let's turn this up a bit, because we are still. So let's hear, this is the overall level of the first wavetable oscillator. And here we have, let's set it to 0 pan. Maybe choose this. So we have 9 dB headroom. And there's another phase function here which interpolates the phases. Sometimes with some material you clearly hear this. It makes the result much smoother, but it also uses quite a lot of CPU in addition to. So you might want to decide if you use the interpolation or not, especially in conjunction with many unison voices. This can be a CPU hog, but it can also sound very good. But with this sample you don't really hear the difference. So let's keep it off for now. And this is reset phases to 0, which with some sounds drastically changes the sound. So each phase is set to a 0 crossing, which we don't want. It sounds more synthetic on many sounds. Let's keep the normal aligned phases mode. Now this was a equal distance mode. Now let's delete the whole thing again. You can also set the markers manually. If you press the Alt key and then click, this will turn into a pencil. So you can say where you want to extract waveforms from. So now we have 20 waveforms selected manually. Of course, sounds much less defined. It's much less the original. Okay, let's delete this again. Select all, cut. Now we have exponential mode, which will set more markers towards the beginning of the sample. And we have to set the amount of markers, so 100 again. So you see the beginning has more markers than the end, which is good for sounds which have a pronounced attack phase and a less complex decay phase, which is not the case with the violins. So another thing about phases, you can also, if you go into spectrum mode, you can also decide to randomize the phase, which can change the sound drastically depending on the source material. Let's normalize all waveforms. Random phase. If you select all here, it will randomize all phases of all waveforms. If you select only one, then it will only affect that single waveform. Now let's choose the spectral mode, which has a different approach. In this case you have a threshold, and the lower the threshold, the more markers will be generated, and they will not be equally distributed, but according to the analysis. And then we have a spectral voiced mode. Let's choose a different window. Let's go back to the equal distance analysis. And back to sequence normalization. Now let's see what we can do with multi-oscillators. So this is the number up to 8 voices, unison voices per waveform, wavetable. Of course, this will affect CPU a lot. So let's choose 4 voices, and this is the detune between the voices. And important with the detuning and unison function is this parameter, the distribution of detuning. So set to 0, it's linear. So if you say 10 cent between each unison voice, there will be 10 cent difference. But if you turn it up, it's gonna be exponential. So setting about 33.3 sounds good in most cases. You have to experiment with that one. And you can of course assign all these things to either quick controls or the modulation wheel in the mod matrix. This is the pan distribution of the unison voices. Then you have different functions like the waveform spread. The higher you spread it, the more, let's look at it visually. So you see there are different playheads then. Then you have random position, random direction, so they don't play only forward but also backwards randomly. Direction parameter, which in addition you can also choose to play it backwards, like minus values. Will of course also affect the speed, and you can of course set the speed to 0 and then assign a controller to position. Can be an LFO or modulation wheel, whatever, and then scan through the whole thing manually, or do wavetable sequencing like that. If you assign a step modulator or something like that to position. Okay, so let's have a look at something more unusual maybe. For instance, a Waterphone sample from one of my sound libraries. Drag it in. Choose sample here first. Go on. There it is. So this is quite a complex sound, and you see the pitch detection is all over the place. Let's set it to highest resolution and listen to it first. Okay, it needs to calculate. First delete all this. We want a new wavetable. So the play button. So let's select only the first segment. Use the equal dist. Let's use, 256, why not? Normalize the sequence. We have speed set to 0. Set it to normal speed. Turn off the multi thing first. Back to start. So the original phase is here. You hear a big difference. Let's go back to, let's choose a rectangular. So this is quite weird. Let's normalize each waveform. So this case is quite interesting to keep the original phases and then maybe interpolate them. Of course, you can then start modifying each waveform. There are multiple methods to do that in the Spectrum editor, which I will explain in the next tutorial because this is a whole topic for itself. But that way you can extremely modify sounds and totally create new waveforms with using resynthesis as a starting point, and then do your own thing. Let's switch back on the multi format in a minute. So this is the formant function, formant thing, where you can change the formants of each wavetable, and you can modulate it with various things, and you have a key follow, so higher notes will have higher formants, or vice versa. also have a key follow function for the speed, so higher notes will either play faster than lower or vice versa. And you can set the center key for the key follow center. So I hope this has given you a little insight into what's possible, and I'll make some more tutorials soon. Have a great day, bye.